Hi guys, it's Kelly Latavola here, and today's video is for the My Monthly Hero blog hop. And today I'm going to be using one of the add-ons. This is called Welcome Home. It does have dies that match it, but I'm not using those today. I knew when I saw the stamp set that if it was going to be one of those ones that was like go big or go home, and I was going to do full-blown scene. So you can see here I have all of the images, the masks of the images stamped out. And it's because I'm diving in. We're doing a whole scene. It's a whole to-do. There's a whole lot of Copic coloring. But I wanted the sentiment, which says welcome to our home, to be kind of like a sign in the scene. So I just outlined that with my T-square ruler and then drew in like a little hanger. And one of the things that's, okay, so it's kind of a little bit of a pain to cut out all of the masks to do a scene. I do them all the time, so it's not really like that big of a deal for me, but I get for like your average crafter, if it's not something that you do, it's kind of a pain. But the reason that I really love them for these scenes is because then I can lay everything out exactly how I want it. I'm using my mini MISTI to stamp everything down, because when you're stamping a one layer card like this is, you have to stamp everything front to back, so that the items that are supposed to be in the forefront of your scene go down first. One of the joys of the MISTI is that you can, if you don't get a good impression, then you can go ahead and stamp it again, and I had to do that on my little bunny who's sitting on the pillow. So then I'm going to put those masks back in place, and then I'm going to move on to the next one. So the squirrel is the next one, and he's a little tricky. He is adorable, but he's kind of a little sneaky one, because I want his butt to be behind the arm of the chair on the left, but I want him to be in front of the arm on the right. So I had to cut apart my mask so that I could mask the part where his little butt is, his little booty, because his little booty's got to be behind that arm. So then once I had him down, I put his mask in place, and then I can go ahead and stamp the chair, and you'll see on his mask I trimmed off that part of his little teeny tiny tush, so that way the arm of the chair would show through. I got it pretty close to that post-it, and so it didn't stamp great, but then I can just go in with a Copic Safe marker and fix it. Then I stamped the little, I think he's a fox, sleeping in front of the fireplace. And then the last thing I will stamp is the fireplace. And again, I had to stamp it twice to get a good impression. I wanted there to be like a wall and carpet. And I didn't show you the ink blending because this is such a long, it was just so time consuming. It took me like an hour and a half. But in the back, I did the masking with the full post-it notes, and the top of it is really light brushed corduroy, and the bottom is really light salty ocean. And this really just saves me from having to waste like a ton of Copic ink coloring in a background, and it's a smoother blend. So I wanted the background to be like wood, because what else would these cute little creatures make their home out of, if not, you know, like a little log cabin type thing. So I originally was thinking about doing it as like the slats, like the wood paneling, you know, circa 1970, but I didn't. It just ended up being like a wood wall, which I'm totally fine with. So when you're doing the wood texture, there's no wrong way to do it, guys. Like, you're just going to kind of make little streaky marks. I make little half circles, and then or little swirls, and then just trace around them. And then I'm doing that in the different colors so that there is some wood texture there with lots of variation for the color. So I started out with my lightest color, which was the E53, and then did the 55 to 57 to the 59. And then once I had all of that down, then I worked back from the 59 back down to the 53. And you can see, I like with very little effort, I achieved that wood texture, which is just like a really cool background. For the carpet, I knew that I wanted there to be texture. I didn't really know how that was going to work. I'm not going to lie. This was my first time like really trying to get textured carpet. So I just did like little scribbles because I wanted there to be some of that little salty ocean that was left and some highlights. And then I'm working as if the fireplace is my light source. So that's why my edges are darker behind that chair, and the bunny is going to be darker because the light wouldn't reach there. It would be brighter closer to the fireplace. Same thing with the little bunny on the right hand side sitting on the pillow. It would be darker behind there. And I mean, I'm legit scribbling it on. Like when I say I'm scribbling it on, you can see there's no real consistency. And then again, from my lightest color out to my darkest, and with the darkest color, I'm kind of putting in like their little shadows. What would be the darkest part, the shadows that would be cast. And then out from the 99 was the darkest color I used. And I'm just going to blend everything back all the way down to the 91. I didn't love the blend. And then look, I forgot my little shadow on the wolf. Like he's got to cast a shadow too. So I had to go back in and get that. So now we're back out to the 91. I didn't love the way that it looked. And then I remembered this little trick that Kathy Rakusen's always talking about with your colorless blender and like a little piece of washcloth. And so that's what I did. I was terrified. I'm not even gonna lie to you. It was so scary because I was so worried about the ink bleeding into my images. Because when you put that colorless blender, everything gets really wet and then the colors will bleed. It actually wasn't too terrible. And it did give me some texture and kind of blend those colors a little bit better. So that's a cool little something to try. Just old washcloth and colorless blender. For the fire, I think the way that this was intended to be was for the top part of the fireplace to be just kind of like decorative brick. I thought it would be really cool if it was see-through and the decorative portion was the arch. So that's how I colored it. I went in with a lightest yellow. I'm getting more intense color as I go into the center. And then the wood that's sitting in there, I did put some brown in, but then I went back over it with the darker oranges and reds because it would be like legit red hot. It would be because it's in the fire. So I picked out some E's and I think I might even have one R in there for the brick colors. And then I'm just, merrily working my way along, happenstance of coloring in just random ones till I have used all of the colors. Now, rather than try to shade each one of them individually, I decided to just color them in and then just shade the whole thing with grays. This is kind of like a little cheat if A, you don't have a lot of markers, or B, you don't want to shade something, all those little areas itself. So I just went in with the, I think it was a C7 and a C5, and then I went in with the yellow, the darker one, because the colors were so dark, and just kind of highlighted those little areas that would be coming down from the fireplace. On the animals, and here on the sign, I'm using a Y00, which is not as intense, but the colors aren't as dark either. To blend that little sign out, which I don't know how I missed it, but I shaded the left-hand side of it with an E50. Now I'm going to go in with these grays, and I don't typically speed up my Copic coloring, but like I said, this took so long, just forever. I didn't want you to be sitting here for forever. So here I'm coloring him gray. I am, the light would be on his back, on the top of his head, on the tip of his tail. All the rest of it would be kind of cast in shadow because he's facing away from the fireplace. So once I have everything blended out, I'm going to go in with that Y00 and just add some yellow to the spots where the fireplace, where the light would hit. And then it looks like he's being lit up by firelight. And it's awesome because coloring is fun. And I like creating things from just like straight white cardstock and being like, yeah, that looks like a little scene, and like, you could lay down in the middle of them and pop open a book and totally be just right there living in their cute little log cabin. So same thing for the bunny. He is backlit, so his yellow is going to be around the edges of his body. His face and the middle of his body will be in shadow. So we're going to do the same grays for that and then add in those yellows just around the edges. And I didn't like how it blended, so I went back in with my C1 just to kind of blend it out a little bit more. This bunny is behind the chair, so he's going to be all dark. He will not have any yellow. That chair is going to block out all of the light. So I'm using the much darker cool grays. But that little squirrel looks like he was looking at something. See how he's looking down? Like, hey dude, what's up? What you doing down there? And so I needed him to be looking at something, and I thought that little bunny was like the perfect, thing to be looking at. So I'm using the same grays to shade his little newspaper, which just slays me. I mean, seriously, how cute is that? The squirrel reading the newspaper. I love it. And then I used the same browns, the E's, for the wall. I'm using the same ones for the squirrel. When you have something this just crazy, I mean, really, people, I was out of my skull. I love the way that it came out. It was just very, very time consuming. But when you have so much going on, you want to try to make it appear to be cohesive. So for the shading of the squirrel, I kept most of it pretty smooth on his body, but for his tail, I used some light flicking motions just to kind of get some texture. And then I even went back in there with my C3 and my C1 just to add in some variation in the color. And then he, on the left-hand side of his face, he also got that yellow. We were talking about the cohesiveness of color. So originally I was going to color this chair green. That's just what I had in my head, like an olive green. And then I realized with the fireplace, I didn't really have anything else that was red in there. And so I thought, okay, well, I'll make the chair red. And then when I'm coloring, you can see I'm laying down my lightest color. Same thing with this pillow. I don't know, I picture this bunny like, hocking the little squirrel's pillow for his little bum. But when you're looking at it, you have to look at it as, okay, what parts would be in the light? What parts are going to stick out? And so the way that the chair is shaped, because the top of the chair, the back of it is rounded, those areas would catch the light. The left-hand side of the chair arm would catch the light. The right-hand side would too, because it's also sticking out. So your darkest shading is going to be behind your squirrel, and then on the left-hand side of your chair, which is facing away from the fire. So in each time, I'm not going up as high. I'm not completely covering the previous color. And then for my darkest one, I'm really just going to add that to where it would really be the darkest. I'm not taking it all over. For the pillow, I'm putting it on just the underneath of the pillow. And then we're going to go just same as we always do, lightest to darkest, darkest to lightest. So all the way back out to the lightest color, blending those things out. This is a little bit of a different red combination for me. I really liked the way that it turned out. The one that I typically use is a little bit more peachy at the base of it, and I didn't think that would play well with the fireplace. So once I have all that done, I'm going to go back in with the yellow and hit the spots that I left white. Then there would be light being cast on the carpet. And so I just went in really, really light-handed because I was terrified to make it green. So I just went in really, really light-handed and did some streaking. I'm going to go back in with some grays and just kind of bulk up those shadows so that they make sense. I started with a C3 because I'm a nervous Nelly and I didn't want to ruin my card after all of this effort. And so then once I had that laid in with the C3 and it wasn't as obvious, I went back in with a C5 and just made them a little bit more noticeable. I decided to do some texture on the chair, just some striping to make it just a little bit more interesting. And so I started with the R29. That was a little dark for the parts that were in the yellow. So I went back with a 24 and got the yellow parts, and then the left-hand side where it was super dark, I had to go in with the R59 because you couldn't even see the stripes with that R29. So once that was all good, I'm going to go ahead and outline my image because that's all of my images, because that's just me. Like, I just like them better with a black outline. I feel like they pop out a little bit more, especially with all of this, like the busyness of the scene. I want each individual image to be able to be seen. So I outlined that, and then the very last thing that I did was go in with some clear Wink of Stella, and just where any of the firelight was, I added clear Wink of Stella along with just a whole bunch of it right over the fire itself. And then that is the whole card. If you're not familiar with My Monthly Hero, I invite you to click on the link below if you're watching on YouTube and head over to the blog and check it out. It's a super cool idea that you can subscribe to. This particular stamp set will be available in the Hero Art Store as well as Simon Says Stamp. So you can pick them up there. It's not part of the kit. It's an add-on. So thank you so much for joining me, guys, and I will catch you on the next video. Bye.